to the Baby Bunting Live series. This is Season 2, Episode 10, and we're excited to be back with you for 2021. As the weather heats up across the country, we wanted to share some tips on summer safety for your little one. We have invited Belinda Joyce along to answer some of our questions as well as yours. Belinda's a midwife, maternal, child health nurse, and author of Survive and Enjoy Your Baby. Thanks for joining us tonight, Belinda.
Thank you for having me.
No worries. So we're going to be covering all things summer safety. So if you do have any questions at all throughout the episode, we ask you pop them in the comments and we'll do our best to get back to you at the end of the episode. So Belinda, on a warm day, what sort of clothing should parents dress their baby in?
Yeah, look, dressing your baby in summer can be quite challenging. You're never really sure, especially because through the winter we dress our babies with so many layers. Moving to summer, whether it can be a little bit confusing choosing what to put them in, but having a think about what you're wearing yourself and whether that's comfortable, how many layers you've got on, and then having a look at some of the different options that are available. Sometimes even just a singlet and a nappy is all that you need on a very, very hot day and they'll be fine. There are some really great options like just some little sleeveless bodysuits. Things like this can be really good because they're nice and thin. They're just giving that little bit of protection. If your baby does get a tiny bit sweaty as well, this will actually help keep them cool. And yeah, they can be really, really helpful.
Perfect. And what about in the evening? How can parents help their baby to sleep in hot weather?
I know even myself, we all have trouble sleeping when it's really hot. So again, looking at their clothing and then looking at what we're dressing them in for bedtime. So if you've been using a swaddle bag or a sleeping bag, just having a look at what TOG rating that is and whether it is suitable for the really hot weather. Quite a few of them are too hot on a hot day, too thick to use on a hot day, and you would be better to either go down to something that's a lot lower, like a 0.2 TOG. I've got a couple of examples of those here. So they're really thin, just one layer, similar to a t-shirt sort of fabric layer. Some of them have the arms that open. There's another one here. Or even using something like a muslin wrap. So they're really nice and thin. You might swaddle your baby in this and then you might just pop some sheets across and a light blanket as the night gets cooler. If you're going to transition to sheets and blankets though, do be really careful that you tuck them in on each side and you short sheet the cot so that the baby's feet are right at the end of the cot so they can't wriggle down and get covered or they can't cover their face with the sheets, and also they can't get tangled up in the sheets as well, and then that's a safe way to sleep your baby.
That's a really good point, Belinda. Now, do babies need water and what age is it okay to start?
Yeah, look, cool boiled water is a really great thing to give your baby who's over 6 months or already started solid foods. It's a really great thing to let them have some sips of water when they're eating food, and also on hot days, just as a little thirst quencher like we do. It's nice just to have some little sips of water, definitely.
Perfect. Now, do babies need extra feeds and fluids in hot weather?
Yeah, they do. So even a younger baby does need extra feeds during hot weather. Again, just like us, they do need to fill up and stay hydrated. They're at more risk of becoming dehydrated, so we do have to be really careful. The way that we offer those extra fluids, though, then differs whether they're breastfeeding or bottle feeding.
Absolutely. So how would you do that if you're breastfeeding?
So with breastfeeding, most babies will demand extra feeds when it's really hot weather. So they'll actually cry and you'll realise that they want to feed, but they'll probably have lots of short feeds rather than those really big long feeds. And that's absolutely fine. And just if your baby's not waking up or not demanding those extra feeds, especially if they're very young and small, it's a good idea just to offer them some extra feeds anyway, and most babies are really happy to have an extra feed, so that usually works.
Oh, absolutely. And then what about when it gets really warm with mum and baby while breastfeeding? What's a good tip for that?
It can get really hot. If you're hot and the baby's hot and you're going to be, together breastfeeding, and that usually takes some time. So putting a cloth or a towel that's wet in between both of you can be really helpful, just to help you both relax and get comfortable.
Oh, lovely. Yeah. And then how does that advice kind of change if parent is bottle feeding?
With bottle feeding, a baby that's under 6 months, you still don't need to give them water, but they might have smaller bottles. So they might have shorter feeds, smaller feeds, and you might find that it's better to make up smaller bottles rather than the big bottles that you might be wasting quite a lot of formula. And many babies will just drink more formula during that 24 hours as well, and that's okay.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. And how can parents protect their baby from the sun?
Yeah, look, sun protection is a really important thing. We live in Australia, we have really dangerous sun and high UV levels, so there's lots of different ways to protect them from the sun. So when you're out and about looking for shade, even just standing under a tree can help, but when you go for a walk with your baby in the pram, it's really important to use something like a purpose-built sunshade rather than using just a blanket or a rug over the pram. What they've actually found, the research has shown that it traps a lot of heat in underneath those blankets and the baby can get really hot. So using something like a purpose-built...
So something like this, I think, which we've got here, would you say that would be perfect?
Absolutely.
So we've popped one on a pram here. So as you guys can see, this sunshade, so these are what we call universal, which means that they can suit all types of different prams. So this sunshade here has a couple of layers. So this top layer here is to really protect from the sun, and it's that added protection. Then you have this really nice mesh layer here that has the side ventilation and the front ventilation as well. And if you do want that extra protection while you've got that afternoon sun streaming into the pram, you can pop this up, and they have two little loops here on either side, and they just slot up in here with these little tags, if I can find one. There we go. So they have these little tags here, and you just pop that in, and I won't do it for now because it might take me a little while, but basically it will end up looking like this. And you can just drop it down when you're not using it. So it would be something like that, I think would be perfect.
That is definitely a lot safer, and it has really good airflow, and that's what's so important on those hot days when you're out and about, and it's also giving the UV protection as well, so a really great option.
Absolutely, and you can grab those from any of our stores and online as well. So what else we were going to ask is, should we use sunscreen on babies?
Yeah. So sunscreen's a little bit tricky. So for the younger babies under 6 months, we don't want to be using sunscreen regularly on their skin. They're so little and there are chemicals and things in the sunscreen. So looking for shade and different shade options at that age if possible, and if that's not possible, using just small amounts occasionally. With a baby over 6 months, it's okay to start using some more sunscreen and using it more regularly, and choosing the sunscreens that are appropriate for their age. So the sunscreens that are sensitive and baby and toddler range. They usually have less chemicals, less fragrance, those kind of things that the baby might be allergic to, or maybe even just a bit sensitive to with their young skin. So you can also test that the first time you use it on your baby. Just test it on a small area of their skin and just check after a few hours that you haven't had any allergic reaction or sensitivity, and then you should be fine to keep using that.
Wonderful. And what about hats?
Hats are really important. So that's one way that we can provide shade for any age group, even adults. But they're a really great option. And there's so many different types. You'll be able to find one that suits your style. I particularly like this little tiny one. It would be great for a newborn. It's got the little back on it as well to provide extra protection. It's got a little chin strap there that would be fantastic to use while your baby's supervised. We wouldn't want you using this if your baby was in the car seat or in the pram sleeping and no one was watching them, just because that's a risk around their neck. But during the day when they're awake, this would be perfect, and really great to take into the pool as well. And then even just these sort of style hats, which are really common, really popular, work really well. They've got the brim all the way around to provide some extra protection as well. But like I said, you will find so many different types out there. You'll probably need a few.
Perfect. Those are really cute. So you mentioned the pool just before. So what about the beach or the pool around water?
Yeah. So we know that going to the pool or the beach, immersing ourselves in water is a great way to cool down. So if you're taking a baby to the public pool, if they're under 2 months, it's probably best to avoid public pools just as there's an infection risk. But after 2 months, that's absolutely fine. And most public pools have got toddler and baby areas that have really great sunshades, fantastic, nice, small, not as deep water. So that works really, really well. And if you're going to the beach, using something like a pop-up, beach hut or an umbrella is really helpful, because you usually stay there for a while as well. So it's hard. You've really got to bring your own shade with you. And then even at home, you can just set up a little wading pool or even use the bath just to help with comfort. And just remembering that newborn babies can get cold very quickly. So if you notice any shivering, maybe if they've been in the water for say 10 minutes, that might be enough. And just keeping a little bit of an eye on that they're not getting too cold. Even on a very hot day, they're not great at regulating their own temperature. So that's really important as well.
Yeah, and I think the other important thing which goes without saying, Belinda, is to always supervise your babies and toddlers around the water.
Absolutely. They can't be left on their own ever.
No, they can't. Now, I was going to say, do you have some bathers
Yes.
that we can see? Because I think there are a few really great options there.
There are. So with the bathers, there's lots of different styles you can choose from. All of these ones provide some sun protection as well, some protection from the UV rays, which is great. Something like this one, you could team up with a swimmer nappy. So we've got a little pack of those over here. These can be really great because that's all you need. The top's going to give you the UV protection, and there's all different styles and colours. They're all very cute. I like this one because it's got the long sleeves as well, so it's just giving that extra protection for your little one when they're in the sun. And they're really cute.
They are super cute. Now, Belinda, you mentioned that babies are at more risk in the heat. So how would parents know if and when babies need medical care?
Sure. So any time that you think your baby's unwell, we're really looking for things like signs of dehydration, heat exhaustion or heat stroke. So most babies won't get those things, but it's really important to know the signs and symptoms to look for. So things like really concentrated urine, not passing urine very often, your baby and how often they usually wet their nappy, so it's helpful to have a bit of an idea of that. Looking for things like red flushed sort of faces, being quite confused, possibly even, not waking for feeds, being quite lethargic and sleepy. If that's not normal for your baby, then it's really important to get medical care, and going to see your GP might be appropriate, but if you think that they need more immediate care, actually calling 000 and getting an ambulance is really important, especially for those young babies that can dehydrate very quickly.
Yeah, definitely. Now, what about cars in hot weather, Belinda?
Yeah, look, cars are probably one of the most dangerous places that we take our babies, and that's because they can heat up very quickly, and we've got all the windows with the sun coming in. So one of the options I like to use are the sunshades on the windows. There's lots of different styles, but this one, you can just stick it into your window space and it will create some shade for your baby. So I really like those, and there's all different sizes and shapes of them. It's just really important to never let your baby stay in the car on their own, because cars heat up extremely quickly. So they can go from within the first 5 minutes of you leaving that car, the temperature actually can rise dramatically and is often at least 30 degrees over the temperature outside of the car. So it's a really dangerous environment for your baby, even just for those first few minutes. So we never want to leave a baby in there. And in actual fact, in most places in Australia, it's illegal to leave your baby in the car, and that's why it's just too unsafe.
Yeah, just don't risk it, I think is the main lesson here.
Yes.
Now, Belinda, do you have any other tips for our viewers this evening?
Yeah, I think it's just really important to remember this might be the first summer for your baby, and they might never have felt hot weather before, and it could be a little bit confusing for them. So remembering to sort of go with the flow, see how they manage it, remember that they're learning, and try to make them as comfortable as they can be, and yourself as well.
Absolutely. Now, we'll turn to Nat and see if there are any questions at all.
We have a question just asking about baby carriers, using those in summer, and is there a negative effect of those on a baby's spine?
So are we talking about the actual car seat carriers, do you think?
The baby, the baby carriers, yeah.
Yeah. Look, most of them, any time that you're wearing your baby very closely to your body, they can get hot, and you will get hot. It's similar to sort of when you're breastfeeding a baby, so it's important to make sure there's good airflow, and also important to make sure the baby's in a safe position so that their chin is not coming down and touching onto their chest and giving them any issues with being able to breathe. There are many different styles out there, so it's really important to make sure that you get one that is keeping the baby in a suitable position, in a safe position. So we never want them to be in a C position, which is where they're all sort of curled around. And I'm just trying to think of where I should direct you to a really great website, but I will link something in the comments to help, just so that I can show you some pictures and things of what to look for.
And it's probably also important to note as well, Belinda, that, you can visit any one of our stores and ask any of our friendly team members, or send us a message in Messenger and we'll get back to you.
And just in relation to extra bottle feeds in summer, is it okay to use a bottle steriliser?
Yes, absolutely fine to use a bottle steriliser. Yep, that's fine.
Christine has just asked, with the sun cover over the pram, are they safe and breathable for babies to use while they're asleep?
Yes, and that's why I love them. So yes, they are very breathable, and it might be really hard to see on this video, but the actual fibre or the material that it's made out of, if I just put my hand inside, I don't know if you can see it. Does that help at all? It's almost like a really thin, soft shade cloth. That would be the closest thing I can think of that it's similar to.
And also most prams, Belinda, have that peekaboo window as well for extra ventilation.
Yes.
So you could open that up and also open up this zip here as well if you needed to. But obviously this is what we want for the protection from the sun. So.
And even if this part was up, I'm not sure if you might be thinking about when that's up. If I just turn that sideways, it's all still open on the sides. So there's really good airflow, even if that front section is up. I hope that explains it well.
Well, if there's no more questions, I'd like to just mention that you can see more of Belinda and her book on her website, and we'll link it in the comments in the post. And if you have any concerns at all about your baby's health or specific questions about any of the topics that we've covered tonight, please see your doctor or any other appropriate health professional. I'd like to thank Belinda again for joining us this evening, and we really hope that you guys have found this episode informative and helpful in some way. And we look forward to seeing you again on the next episode of the Baby Bunting Live series.